Welcome to Inflection Point Podcast, where we cultivate change from the inside out as we ponder the Cairo question. Will Cairo have to protest in his lifetime for the birthright to freely and peacefully exist in the skin in which he was born? We stand on the belief that dismantling racism goes beyond laws and legislation or politics and economics. Here, anti-racism activation is presented as an inside job where personal transformation and accountability impact social change. So take a seat at the anti-racism activation table with Inflection Point Podcast.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to our audience to the newest episode of Inflection Point Podcast. This is our very first new episode for this year. So I'm really excited. I'm Anita Russell, and I am the co-host and the creator of Inflection Point Podcast. And we are dedicated to the art of listening and authentic conversation, community engagement, grassroots movement, and accountability. So here's a quick hello from co-hosts Mavis and Gail.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mavis Bauman. Happy New Year.
Hi, I'm Gail Hunter, and Happy New Year.
Yes. Happy New Year. Because it is a new year, that means we have a new theme for 2026. And our theme is Reimagine We begins with Reimagine Me. And I'd like to start off with the opening statement of what I call the Reimagine We Declaration of Engagement. I was getting ready to say Declaration of Independence, but it's actually the Declaration of Engagement. So I'm going to just kind of go through and read the very first preamble, if you will, of that declaration. We live in a world built on extraction, not relationship. It was designed to consume people, land, labor, and spirit in the name of profit, power, and dominance. It taught us competition instead of cooperation and dominance. It taught us competition, hoarding instead of sharing, alienation instead of belonging. It taught us that our worth is measured by productivity and that our humanity is conditional. We reject the principle of extraction and embrace the principles of cooperation, relationship, and collaboration. Key principles of healthy relationships include mutual respect, trust, and affection. Additionally, understanding and addressing each other's needs, effective communication, and conflict resolution are essential for building strong collaboration. And for me, this whole idea of reimagining we, it's like, let's reimagine a different future. If you listen to the current introduction, it kind of takes us all the way back to the beginning of the podcast when we first launched the podcast. And the central question was, will Cairo have to protest in his lifetime for the birthright to freely and peacefully exist in the skin in which he was born? There's a part of me that says he will not yet have that freedom unless we make a choice to do something different and to take a stand for something different, because Cairo's future is still at stake. He's 5 years old now. When we started this podcast, he was literally just a baby. He's 5 years old, and that question still has not been fully resolved. So for this year, we're going to talk about this idea of reimagining we, and how the concept of reimagining we, building a different future, depends on us as individuals and as citizens reimagining ourselves in a different kind of way. Mavis, Gail, your thoughts on the Declaration of Engagement?
Well, I think
ready, Gail?
Yeah, I mean, the key principles are healthy, just healthy characters of a relationship that includes all respect and trust and and caring, compassion. And that needs to be there in any relationship that we are involved in, certainly between family members, but also between one another, whatever color skin somebody may have.
Mhm. I get excited about the idea because we're at more than an inflection point, it seems. Prime Minister Carney said last night at Davos, we are not transitioning. This is a rupture. It's a rupture throughout the world. And we want to be a part of the energy that's moving our communities, our country into a different way of being. That's where the reimagining comes in. How can we live differently on the world? We could go back to the way things were 10 years ago. Would that have solved any problems? So reimagining who we are, how we think and behave, where we get started.
Because it's more than just the words on a piece of paper. It has to be the actions and the belief and the values that must change too. That we are in a rupture, and it's a very frightening rupture for many people, and we don't know what's going to happen. And so that's even more the reason why we need to really reevaluate, where do we stand in this, and where are we with human rights and with all the different issues that are flying all around. So I think it's a very important time period.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Both of you are just hitting the nail right on the head. So let's begin this new journey of reimagining we with a focus on one of the things that I think is a very crippling part of our country. Besides racism and all these other things that we've been talking about, let's talk about hyper-individualism. And hyper-individualism, and I use the word hyper because in America, this idea of individualism and this bootstrap mentality, it just doesn't ring true. When people make statements like, I was self-made, somebody helped you along the way. Even if it was somebody giving you your first bottle of milk when you were a baby, somebody helped you along the way. And so I think when we have that hyper-individualism way of looking at the world, it's very easy to look at things or other people and say, what happens to you just isn't my problem. I'm just concerned with the things that happen to me. I pulled myself up by my own bootstraps. I don't know any baby, baby who comes into this world with bootstraps. And there's a video by a gentleman by the name of Johnny Wimbrey. And he makes this statement that when you come into the world as a baby, nobody was there to teach you or to tell you to walk. It's something on the inside of you that prompts you as a baby to take that first step. Or that's something that's on this inside of you that prompts you as a baby to make your first word, rather, to speak that very, very first word. So the point being, had it not been for somebody outside of yourself, you wouldn't even be here. So this whole idea of this hyper-individualism, it kind of just drives me crazy. So I want to hear what Mavis and Gail have to say about I want to say vigilantism, hyper-individualism.
Good Freudian slips tonight there, Anita. The baby wouldn't walk or talk without a mother collaborating with that baby to grow and do both. We are meant to be in community. So that's what it makes me think of. That's it for now. What do you got, Gail?
Well, I mean, developmentally, none of us could have made it on our own at all. But I also believe that we came here knowing what we have to bring to this world. But it's up to the people around us to support and validate um, and and see that in us, for us to be able to internalize that belief system again, so that we can live that. But to believe that we don't need anybody, even the corporations need the people that are working there. They need the people that are buying their product. I mean, they couldn't make money without community or people buying what they are selling, right? So it's in any walk of life, we all need other people, um,
Absolutely.
and for a variety of different reasons, we all need somebody,
Absolutely. Like it's just
and we need to give to
unbelievable to
others
me
too.
to think that there
Yeah.
are individuals out there who really believe this whole notion of own bootstraps and everything. But the issue, the underlying issue in that whole individualism thing is that nobody told us that when you build a society only on individualism, or if that is the main factor that you raise people on, that this is the philosophy, you eventually devour your own people. I saw that statement
Self-destruct.
somewhere. Yeah, and it just rang so true for me. This idea of that individualism will eventually cause us to devour ourselves.
Without the humanness, without the compassion, without the sensitivity, the awareness or consciousness that we are all in a collective energy here, that without that, we would destroy ourselves. And that's, I think, partially what's happening. I also think that hyper-individualism is a great excuse for not moving beyond self and not seeing self through others' eyes and self in perspective of one of many. And so I think it's just an avoidance of a truth that we all need to start to reconnect to.
Absolutely. And here's a final thought on this this idea of individualism. When I am taught that my success has nothing to do with you, your suffering becomes invisible. And so exactly. Exactly. So as long as my success, I consider my success, it's not connected to anybody else. So when my success extracts things from other people, and those other people are suffering as a result of that extraction, that suffering is invisible to me because it doesn't feed what I'm all about. And it doesn't feed this idea of individualism.
And that has to be the foundation of greed. Because if you don't see outside yourself, you don't see the suffering, you think you're winning more and more and more.
That's the avoidance then, right? It fits if that's what your goal is.
Yeah.
Then you're not going to see the suffering of others, and you're not going to see the humanity that is all around you and that you are a part of. You won't need to, right? But that's how one avoids it.
Yeah, and you won't see it because you're blinded by your own perception, and your own perception is erroneous. I don't care how people could tell me I'm crazy or like what you're saying doesn't make any sense, but it's erroneous to really believe and walk through this world believing and thinking that you did everything on your own.
Right.
That's just ridiculous to me. So just taking this conversation a little bit further, if I want to flip it now over to Reimagine We, and how that begins with reimagining me. So if you know anything about me, anybody that's in the audience, one of the things that I talk about or have been talking about throughout most of my career when it comes to life coaching is the idea of cultivating change from the inside out. And I truly believe that our ability to cultivate change within ourselves is the real power of being a human being. Because you can go through life with these thoughts and beliefs and ideas and all of that. And whatever those thoughts, beliefs, and ideas are that lie within you, they show up in your words, your actions, and your behaviors. And so for me, this idea of reimagining something different requires me to see something different or to realize something that needs to be different within myself, right? So I feel like if we kind of think about Reimagine We as this like three-way intersection, right? So there's personal empowerment that links into community engagement. And from community engagement, you can give birth to cooperative economics. So all three of those are essential for transforming individuals from passive participants in an economic system that is based on capitalism to actively co-creating in collective agency. It's a completely different way of looking at ourselves in relation to ourselves, but also in relation to the people that are around us, whether they look like us or they don't look like us. Your thoughts?
It just occurred to me that, we've talked about personal transformation, as you said, since the beginning, that the whole process is ongoing. As the world changes, as your relationships change, as you learn, it is an ongoing process of re-examining your thoughts and beliefs. Since the beginning of my involvement in this podcast, I have learned some pretty shocking things about myself, and I continue to, and I hear more of what I'm saying that isn't fair and things like that. It's an ongoing process to transform yourself, but it's worth it.
Oh, yeah, it's absolutely
yeah.
worth it. Your thoughts, Gail?
Well, we can't change anything without changing the belief system that we come from and we believe that we've been attaching to. And so it's an inside job. We have to start within ourselves to begin to allow that transformation to take place. But it also has to include consciousness and awareness of others. It's, when you look at what's happening in the world at the moment and in our country, it's the opposite of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not going to work. It's going to create destruction. And everybody can see it and fear it. And other countries are obviously calling it out. But that's an example of how that happens. And if we are just thinking about self, right? There is no collective. There is no connection to others. There's no need for anyone else. And it will be a self-imploding experience.
Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. So let's take that Reimagine We and bridge it into Reimagine Me, right? So when you think about it through that lens, now we're talking about how personal empowerment prepares me as an individual to be able to engage meaningfully in these cooperative ways of doing things. For example, cooperative economics. While cooperative economics kind of provides the platform to sustain and multiply that empowerment, right? And community created, community centered democratic ways. So it starts with that personal empowerment and what am I bringing into the spaces that I'm in to transfer that empowerment into a more cooperative environment or a more cooperative way of doing things. And I'm talking about not just like in my household. I'm talking about across the board. Like I have I'm a member of Ujima Collective, and I say this on multiple occasions. Lakeisha Wolf, who's the executive director over at Ujima Collective, and she does this expression sometimes where she's explaining this stuff up here. Like here's all this stuff that's going on above us. But the thing that will really make a difference is what's going on down here between us, right? And that's where this whole idea of personal empowerment connecting rather to community engagement, which then in turn connects to cooperative economic structures, right? So let's talk about that and talk about there being this shift from individualism to collective agency, because that's really what we're talking about. Reimagine We, beginning with Reimagine Me, is really about making that shift from individualism to collective agency. How do we do that?
Yeah.
I think that's what democracy is supposed to be about, right? So how do we do that? We thought we knew we were doing it, but things have changed in the last year. So we do it by pretty much what you're saying. We have to move beyond. We have to certainly reimagine ourselves, right? And do it in a way that has a base that is open to the collective and a part of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's consider these 4 items here in terms of how we start shifting from individualism to collective agency. Let's start with breaking our dependency on extractive systems.
What does that mean, Anita? What extractive systems are we talking about here?
We're talking about the way the country operates in a capitalistic way. The prevailing way is capitalism, and capitalism is about extracting things out in terms of like consumerism and things like that, but not necessarily putting anything back.
Oh, totally one way then.
It's just right.
Totally
one-way system.
Completely one way. It's a one-way system. And so when you think about it through the lens, for example, of environmental issues and and all of that, how we take out of the environment, but we don't replenish so that the environment
or care
can
about
continue.
it.
Yeah, exactly. So there's some continuation without there constantly being a breakdown. I feel like we're constantly in breakdown. Things are breaking down, and because we've extracted so much out.
That's right.
We got a big mess.
We're in a big mess. Exactly.
We're in a big mess. Okay, thanks.
So that's what I mean when I'm talking specifically. When I use that term, I'm talking almost specifically, or maybe even exclusively, about capitalism and how capitalism functions and all of that.
Okay.
So there's that notion, the breaking dependency on extractive systems, but then there's also values-driven participation, which ties into the first one, because if you're only about extracting out, what value are you actually putting back in? And so if you're not of that values-driven participation and you're just taking out, you're crippling the system, you're crippling people, you're crippling consumers. Just think how many times have we heard in the last, since the beginning of the year, food recalls, eggs. We just saw the thing for tuna, canned tuna, all of these things that are getting recalled because where's the value-driven processes behind our food producing mechanisms that ensure that we're going to have food that's safe?
Where's the value of the employees? I'm sorry, what did you say, Gail?
Yeah. Even products that are safe, but yes, talk about the employees,
where is valuing the employees so that they care and are rewarded for a product that is not recalled? I mean, this is, intensive labor kinds of things, manufacturing, food production. Yeah, that's an issue with me, is valuing employees.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And the whole idea of valuing employees is rooted into the whole issue with labor in the United States. And we all know that labor was built initially on chattel slavery.
On zero value of employees.
Right. So I paid no one to do the labor. And when you think about the whole idea of the minimum wage, it's unthinkable to me that there are still states where the minimum wage is like less than $7 an hour.
I know.
That's insane. It is a sin in and of itself.
It's a sin, absolutely. because the companies are still making money.
Right.
You know, if that weren't the case, it would be,
Right.
you know,
No, they're
it would be a
making more than
different
enough money.
story. Yeah, but
Right.
they're the, you know, this you know, metric of CEOs making what 360 times what their average employee makes.
Exactly.
I'm not sure if that number
Right.
is current. It might be worse now. But
Well, we could just sum it up by saying it's a big difference.
it is a big difference.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
That was my phone.
Oh, didn't hear it. Didn't hear it.
Oh,
Yeah, you can hear
okay.
it, yeah.
So the other thing, just continuing this conversation in terms of making that shift from individualism to collective agency is the idea of education and skill development. So you start thinking that, so for example, you hear all this stuff about AI, and AI is going to take away all of the entry level positions. So what does that do in terms of education and skill development? Because if I can go and get the skills that I need, but then the skills aren't necessarily applicable in the current society because we've gotten rid of certain types of labor and replaced it with a machine or with a computer. And so how do you make up for that? Does that mean people who only have a high school education are not going to be able to get jobs or not be able to participate in the labor force? Like, what is that going to do for them, right? And then as things start to get pushed down more and more and more, and when you see things like the president calling for nursing to no longer be considered a professional, like, what is that?
A rupture, part of the rupture.
Right.
Part
It's
of the
bizarre.
rupture.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And then let's think about it through the lens of sustainability and resilience. How are we going to sustain this? Where we are right now, is this sustainable? And is it even resilient? Or is it just destructive?
Yeah. Sure feels pretty destructive.
At the moment, it's very destructive. And does not promote resiliency in any way.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how long lasting it is.
Right.
You know, the various aspects of destruction that we've seen.
Exactly.
Will we come in
nationally and
redesign
globally.
those places? Right. Yeah.
And what you just said, come in and redesign those spaces. We have to start by redesigning ourselves. We have to start thinking about, how do I walk through all of this confusion? Like, am I still the person that walks through and says, rah, 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 when you see something going wrong, horribly wrong, and someone else ends up being hurt? And the story gets massaged in such a way that the person that ends up getting hurt is now considered to be the villain. Like, what do we do with that?
Well, I'm just hoping that this breakage causes us to put things back together differently.
Yeah, I hope so.
I also believe that within each of us, there is a place deep within us that knows what that absolute truth is. And we have to be willing to look within ourselves and access that, so that you don't look at a situation and say, oh, well.
Yeah.
And let go of the people that actually were the perpetrators in it.
Exactly. So this is actually a good moment for us to take a break. And when we come back, we'll continue our conversation. And we're going to talk about, in this next segment, we'll talk about Kwanzaa principles and how they become a blueprint for collective agency. So welcome back to Inflection Point Podcast as we continue our conversation about the Reimagine We Declaration of Engagement. So I'm going to pass the baton over to Mavis, and she wants to finish out a thought from the previous segment. So take it away, Mavis.
Yeah, this has to do with this idea of collective economics or collaborative economics. I'm getting the words mixed up. Cooperative. Oh my gosh. Anyway, it made me think of the story of Chobani yogurt. And I looked it up tonight and heard the head of the company's description of what happened. He saw that there was an old yogurt factory that was going to be closed down, and he visited it, and there were 55 employees there. And he said, on the spreadsheet, it wasn't making money, but he said, people are not on the spreadsheet. So he buys this old operation, keeps 4 of the employees to rethink it, and then hires the people back, and then gives each worker 10% ownership in the company. I'm not sure, let's see, yeah, for giving 10% of his company to workers. So totally 10%. So they are invested in such a different way. It's not, it's just so much more of a sharing situation. You know, when I worked in the corporate world, I might get a bonus if the company did well, but I didn't own stock. It didn't give me stock, so that I got my portfolio got to move with that particular stock. Anyway, his heart for doing that was just so extraordinary. And he went up to a multi-billion-dollar company so fast. And you know, when I go to the grocery store, I buy Chobani because I know that story. And so the goodwill goes a long ways as well. And the same is true of other cooperatives like credit unions. And we were just talking about health insurance, medical sharing organizations.
And food co-ops.
Food co-ops, building co-ops. People come together and have the interests of everyone at hand. It's not individualistic, at least far less than the other kinds of organizations that we involve in. So I just wanted to, give a shout out to Chobani. I think that attitude is really what we're looking for, and perhaps even an improved form on that.
So that's an example of breaking from that dependency on an extractive system.
That's right.
The script was flipped, and now the profit is being shared amongst the individuals that are actually there running and helping with the manufacturing and all of that.
Exactly. And that's what he said in the it was a TED Talk, actually. He said, I couldn't have done this company without the employees there.
Right.
Yeah, he acknowledged it. It's like far out.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's a good story.
So let's shift our conversation a bit to Kwanzaa. And the reason I wanted to do that is because I look at Kwanzaa, as I mentioned before we went on a break, I look at it as a blueprint for collective agency. And so when I think about, as an example, I usually just about every year try to go to a Kwanzaa celebration somewhere. Right. But it's more than just that celebration that happens at the end of the year. That's sort of like the culminating moment, if you will. But the principles themselves are played out on a daily basis. And I keep going back to Ujima Collective because I love that organization. I love the women, the sisters, and all of that. And that is an organization that really exhibits and demonstrates the Kwanzaa principles on a regular basis. So I want to talk about Kwanzaa. So for those people who are listening who have no idea what the heck Kwanzaa is, it's actually a holiday, a week-long celebration, if you will, that happens from December the 6th, the day after Christmas, up until January 1st in the new year. And a lot of people are misperceived, if you will, in terms of what Kwanzaa actually is. It's not a religious holiday. It's not something to take away from Christmas or to take away from New Year. It's not any of those things. But it is a little bit of a warning. It was never meant to be a holiday. It's meant to be a blueprint. And it's a system design manual for people who want to go down this road of liberation and cooperative economics. So it gives us these principles, and those principles are associated with that reimagine me, right? And so it was developed by Malana Karenga, a scholar, a cultural activist. He believed that people of African descent needed more than just protest. So this is going back to the 60s. They needed a cultural foundation to sustain struggle and rebuild community and restore dignity that had been systematically stripped away by slavery and colonization. So that's what the concept of Kwanzaa is rooted in. So it was designed to reconnect African Americans with African values. And the name Kwanzaa itself comes from a Swahili word that means first fruits. So it symbolizes harvest and renewal and responsibility to the community. And isn't that what this whole Reimagine We conversation is all about? And so Kwanzaa at its core asks this question: what does it mean? And what does it look like to be accountable to one another as a people? Like, what does that actually look like? Or what could that actually look like? It's the underside, if you will, of the whole concept of individualism.
Yeah.
It's the other side of the coin, if you will.
Other side of selfishness, the other side of greed, the other side of, or it's about kindness, consideration. How do my actions affect you?
Right.
And holding yourself accountable for
And
how
then
your
ownership,
actions
right?
affect you. Go
Taking
ahead,
ownership of what, taking ownership of what is yours to own and to look at and to look in the mirror at. Because if we don't look in that mirror, we're never going to be willing to change anything within ourselves or within this community.
Exactly.
Can I give a silly example? My cousin has an issue in her town in Colorado. She just bought a house. 2 houses nearby have floodlights in the back that burn all night and fill her house with light. And so it just is a perfect example of, I'm here, but how am I affecting other people?
Absolutely.
How are my actions? Even, I didn't even think about a light. It's just, and she's got to go through some sort of conflict, even though it's against the rules in the area. Even rules don't make us behave properly, right?
No.
It's like we have to think about other people.
Right. And that is a perfect example of holding yourself accountable.
Yeah.
What is the impact that I am having on my neighbors with these floodlights all over the place? It's got to be an impact. What is that impact? And am I interested in knowing what that impact is? Because that's where the accountability comes in. Because if you're not interested in even knowing what the issues are, then that's where you are, right? And so again, Kwanzaa was not created to commemorate something, but it was created to cultivate values and consciousness and collective responsibility, which kind of connects back to the accountability issue. And so it reminds us of who we are when the world insists that we forget who we are. So when it's used as a blueprint for collective agency, it becomes a path to power, a path to cooperative power, or I should put it this way, a cooperative path to power.
Yeah.
Right? And so what I'd like to do is go through each one of them very, very briefly. The first Kwanzaa principle is umoja, and that is unity. And it's basically an emotional infrastructure and a daily ethic. So if you walk through the world with a uniting mindset, So it's not just like umoja means everybody is the same. It's not about the sameness. It's about having relational alignment where we can be unified together, meaning we choose connections even when we disagree. Doesn't mean we have to agree on everything, but the disagreement doesn't break the connection, right?
Well,
Wow.
let's think about the two concepts of kindness and respect, right? If every person chose to interact with another human being, whatever the situation was, whatever context, whatever, from a place of kindness and respect, this world would be different. It would
Yeah.
have to be different. And I think that's what it's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of blueprint, right?
Yeah,
And taking responsibility for not just me, but for that ability to create and sustain that
Yeah.
level of consciousness.
And to stay in relationship, even in a
Right.
disagreement. That's tough. And
Right.
this is what's happened in this country. We are not in relationship.
Yeah. No, at all.
In
absolutely.
the two
Power
parties.
struggle.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm glad you said that, because the reimagine me question that goes with this concept of umoja and unity is, how can I stay in relationship even when I am in disagreement? The disagreement doesn't have to break or hinder or
Right.
harm the relationship.
No. It's like if somebody feels threatened by the difference of what they believe versus another, then they go into a place of judgment and criticism, right? And that's what threatens that, right? And that's what causes somebody not to be able to hear what the other person's saying, and acceptance of that we disagree on this. And I'm curious
Right.
about what that's about for you, and the other is curious about what that's about for me. That's what I think it's getting to, is how that could happen and play out differently.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so the next principle is Kuji Chagulia, and that is self-determination. And this is really somewhat of a radical principle in America, because self-determination is actually an act of freedom. And you cannot reimagine the world if you've never reimagined yourself in the world. So that whole idea of self-determination is identity imposed versus identity chosen, right? So we have just about 10 more minutes, so I want to try to get through all of this. And so the reimagine me question is, how can I stay in, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. What identity or belief do I need to release in order to live more freely, right? And so the next one is Ujima, which is collective work and responsibility or shared stewardship. So this is about relationships such as love and action, not blaming, rejecting individualism, which we had talked about, moral outsourcing. And the question associated with that from a Reimagine We perspective is, where am I willing to take responsibility for the collective well-being of my community, right? And next we have Ujamaa, my favorite one, right? And that one is about cooperative economics, where wealth as shared capacity. Capitalism says win at everyone else's loss. That's that whole idea of extraction. But Ujamaa says wealth is not measured by accumulation, but by circulation, reciprocity, and sufficiency for all. Right?
Gorgeous.
So powerful.
It's so gorgeous.
And then the corresponding Reimagine Me question is, how can I use my resources to increase collective well-being rather than individual advantage? So the next one is, I'm trying to get through them real quick. The next one is NIA, which stands for purpose, and its purpose as vocation in service of liberation. And it's actually the bridge between that inner clarity and outward action, right? So it kind of orients work towards what we are creating, not what are we resisting. So we can say that we're resisting these capitalistic systems. Okay, that's really cool. But what are we creating to replace this capitalistic system? Right? Because whatever we do, what do we want future generations to inherit? Whatever we do in this moment in time, Cairo's going to walk in that when he's older. Gail, your grandchildren are going to walk in whatever it is we create today, right? And the next one is Kuumba, which is creativity. And this is all about world building. It's about how oppressed people survive. We resist, we imagine alternatives, ways to extractive systems, right? Art, storytelling, music, design, all of those things are enveloped in creativity, right? And then we have Amani, and Amani is faith. That is courageous hope that is grounded in action. And faith sustains us when systems are unjust and where outcomes are uncertain. It becomes the principle that prevents despair, right? When challenges accumulate, it fuels long-term commitment rather than short-term burnout. So the question is, what am I willing to trust into being, even when I cannot yet see the result? So give me some feedback on these principles.
I think we are all doing
it.
I think we're doing that right now.
Yeah.
Right? That's exactly what we're doing with this podcast.
Yeah, we may not see the results.
We may not. Hopefully we will, but we're doing what we can now, right? To believe that there will be a result.
And that's how I felt when I started my nonprofit in Rwanda.
Right.
I just had this sense that I didn't need to see the harvest. I said that many times because if I knew that I was eliminating suffering for even a few minutes a night, a day, that was worth a lot to me. And it's spread. It's just spread. So it's worth it. It's worth taking that risk, even if you don't know what the result is going to be.
Absolutely.
Because,
Absolutely. Yes. So we talk a lot about this idea of being at this inflection point, hence the name of our podcast. And an inflection point is defined as a moment when the direction of a system fundamentally changes, not gradually, but decisively. We're making a decision that this is how we want to proceed, right? We are actively and intentionally applying these 7 principles of Kwanzaa as an example, as an inflection point, because it shifts the operating logic of how people, communities, and institutions relate to one another. So it's not symbolic, it's structural. It is structural.
Yeah, Anita, can you just repeat the comment you made earlier about being in the Black community and how you've always had that sense around you that for me in the white community is kind of foreign. I just haven't thought or felt I'm a part of this community. It never felt that way. So can you just share that? I think a lot of my white friends would find that interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is like somewhat of a very clear distinction, if you will. I was talking with Jerome earlier, and we were talking about how, like, when we grew up, when we were like teenagers, whenever we were walking down the street and you see another Black brother or Black sister across the street, you go like this. And that was a symbol of united. We are here in this community together. And so that's the reason why all of this stuff resonates with me so much, because this is like defining my life. Right? And the part of that is because growing up and understanding the world that I was living in. So everybody who's heard my story knows that I was raised by an activist mother. And so she instilled things in me that have carried me through most of my life. And this whole idea of being in community has always been a very powerful force in my life. And I think earlier when we shared, when we were talking, and I shared that moment that I had when I was on African soil for the first time, when I was in South Africa, I was literally overwhelmed because I felt like such a connection to the individual. I'd never seen him before. This is my first time being in South Africa. But the really great thing about that, and the thing that I appreciate most, is that I was there to do work. I was there to be in community engagement.
Yeah.
And so I was walking in that without even having all of these tools and this language that I have now. I had that then. Right. So we literally have 2 more minutes.
Oh, doggone it. We might have to carry this on next time.
Yeah. So to our audience, I just want to say and ask you, where do you stand in all of this conversation that you're hearing? Where do you stand? What are you feeling? Are you feeling are you feel like you're being towards this? Oh my God, I'm so excited. Are you feeling like you're being pulled towards something deeper in your life? Because that's what the intention is, right? And the intention was for this session to awaken your own inner clarity, building your courage, and connecting you in a like-minded community. That's what this is all about, creating like-minded communities. Right. So we have to go. So I want to just finish out real quick. So to all of our listeners, I'd like you to consider this. Which of the Kwanzaa principles do you resonate with most in your daily life? Which do you need to live more fully in your own life this year? So I'm asking people who are hearing this, make that commitment. What is that one Kwanzaa principle that you can totally relate to, but what is that one that you want to set up as a practice in your life? And I ask these questions because transformation is not something that we join. It's something that we become. And so I invite you to meet with us. We're here every first and third Wednesday of the month here on Transformation Talk Radio. And I'm delighted to be able to engage in this conversation. I'm excited that this is our year to talk about Reimagine We and how it begins with Reimagine Me. So I'm going to sign off at this point, and I will see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to Inflection Point Podcast, where our mantra is cultivating change from the inside out. The journey towards anti-racism and social change doesn't stop here. Truth, reconciliation, and healing come from ongoing, open, honest, and deliberate conversations. Continue to dive in and deconstruct your thoughts, ideas, and beliefs as we band together to manifest social change. Tune in to Inflection Point Podcast every first and third Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, here on TransformationTalkRadio.com for more conversations about how we can cultivate change from the inside out.